Hey everybody, Jewel back with another astrology video, and I'm talking about composite aspects in this series, and we are focusing on the sun in this particular 12-part first series here of the larger series of the larger series, and talking about the composite sun in the houses and what that means and how that shows up between two people. So I have a separate video that explains what composite charts are and talks about specifically the composite sun, and gives more information about that, so you should watch that first and then come back to this. So you have, if you don't know what composite charts are, you don't know very much about composite charts, that will help you understand what the sun actually means in this type of midpoint or Davison relationship chart. My composite series applies to both the midpoint and the Davison relationship chart. So the sun is, the drive of the couple. It's the energy of the couple. It represents, the ego between two people and the real force of the relationship. So, and really the goals and the energy and the expression between two people. So, it has a lot to do with the shared goals between two people, and specifically in a composite chart. Because this is the chart of the relationship. This is not the day-to-day relating. This is the bigger picture here. This is the actual birth chart of a relationship between two people. So you read it, like a birth chart, but you're keeping in mind that it's not. It is the chart of the energy between two people. So it's really like the child, the relationship child that two people have between them. You read it kind of like that. So when we have the sun in the first house, this is, the first house is in the composite chart. It's very much about what other people see, very much about that first impression, very much about the what we show, but not necessarily what we're feeling. And it's more, considered a impersonal house in the composite chart, but at the same time, it's a sensitive house because things in the first are going to readily show up. I mean, they are right on the surface between the two people, and on the outside, the other, the public or others that know about this relationship are going to, readily comprehend what's going on there in the first house of the composite chart. So when we have the sun coming in here, it is typically, astrologers in traditional text will talk about this being one of the best places for the composite sun. I don't agree. It has its good points, for sure. But we also end up talking about identity issues, generally, when we have the sun in the first house in the composite chart. So this tends to be a very self-contained couple. They really don't look outside the relationship for much outside of, what's going on between them. So, in the beginning, this is generally great. It's good for bonding, good for, for having a lot in common. Basically, they do. These two people have a lot in common. They are, on the same page when it comes to, lifestyle. Now, that doesn't mean emotionally that they're on the same page. We're not talking about the emotions or the feelings in the relationship. We're talking about the ego, the expression, the energy, the things that have to do with how we want to get somewhere together. So they tend to relate to each other exclusively when we have two people with the sun here. So this is good because you know, we want to have a relationship where we both feel, you know, where we can turn to each other, but it tends to be too much over time when we have the composite sun here. Now, you also have to consider the natal charts, because we could have two people that are, you know, very individual that have this, and this is not going to be such, you're not going to see so much of the negatives show up here. And you also have to look to aspects from the sun, to the sun, from other planets as well. I'm talking about one thing at a time here. And we consider everything in astrology. So we're just talking about the sun in itself in the first house, and nothing else with that, because aspects and different stuff is going to change that. So, you know, it can be close, but too close, because the actual identity of the pair, you know, of the individuals, becomes the identity of the relationship. So, and the ego is involved in a great deal when we have a first house sun. A lot of times, even if this relationship is not working out, when we have the composite sun in the first house, they can be really, really reticent to let that go, because they don't want to be seen as failures. They don't want to be seen as giving up. They, you know, because this is a very public position. Their public, you know, what the public thinks of their relationship is very important to the two people in it. So they can be very hesitant to show up in a negative way publicly. So they can, a lot of times, tend to hold on to a relationship that they shouldn't necessarily be trying to hold on to when we have the composite sun in the first house, because, you know, it's a lot of the image here is, you know, is involved, and there's a fear there of cracking that. So they have to grow as separates in order to feel like they are growing enough in the partnership. Because generally, if they aren't, these two people, if they aren't, you know, along the way, continuing to enhance their individual self-perception, their individual personalities, their individual goals, if they are not, and they tend to not want to, if they are not furthering those individual things, at least one of the partners, but typically both, and we can often have two people that have a composite sun because they've gotten into this relationship because they have codependent issues to begin with. We can often see one of the partners that eventually feels like they need to break away because their individuality is being colossally compromised by being in this relationship. So typically both partners in composite charts feel the things that are going on there. Whether or not one of them or both of them, you know, acknowledges that or decides, you know, to do healthy things or, you know, behave in healthy ways, that, you know, is totally, you know, on the individuals. But generally, this is a position where both people need to make sure that they are growing outside the relationship, so the relationship itself doesn't die of non-growth, because you can't grow exclusively. It's like putting, you know, something in, you know, into a terrarium, or, you know, putting a plant into an enclosed space and putting, you know, like a glass bell cover over it. and not feeding it or giving it any outside energy, nothing. That plant is going to do well at first because it's in an environment where it's keeping all that moisture in, it is keeping the nutrients in, it's not being dried out from the outside atmosphere. You know, it's actually doing well because it's self-contained, but eventually that plant is going to start to die because it isn't receiving outside nutrients. It isn't receiving. So what had it in such a great condition, such a great environment in the first place, if it's not eventually receiving outside influx of energy, support, water, food, nutrients, it is going to die in that perfect environment that fostered its initial growth, its initial happiness. So we need to make sure that we're bringing outside experiences into the relationship when we have composite first sun, and that we are growing as individuals so that we can grow as a couple, because you can't grow as a couple if you're stagnant on your own. So it's a placement where generally, you know, shared lifestyle goals, you know, great. There's an agreement about, you know, basic style, not emotional style, but, you know, basic style of what we're after. They tend to use their energy in mutually, you know, beneficial ways. They work well together, you know, especially, you know, in a physical way. And, you know, the sun is the action and the outer expression. So, you know, they tend to show up as, you know, having a lot in common, and because they do. But they just need to be careful about making sure that they are also doing their individual stuff as well as being that joined at the hip couple. So, hope you enjoyed this. Please subscribe to my channel if you haven't, and I'll be back with more super cool videos. I will be putting out more composite and synastry videos while I'm doing birth placements through signs and houses at the same time, because I can't just do one thing at a time. I will die if I have to do like one series 12 in a row. That will kill me. I have to be able to mix it up, so you never know what you're going to get here. So you can find me on Facebook at Truth in Aspect Astrology, and on the internet at truthinaspectastrology.com. Yes, I do private consultation. I'll be back soon, soon, soon. Bye-bye.